So, welcome to Modern Legal Practice, designing tomorrow's practice today. If there's one thing I've learned over my decade of legal practice, is how the most successful practices aren't really about just legal expertise, and that the secret to a thriving legal practice today often lies beyond traditional legal wisdom. And so today we're diving into a topic that many lawyers, including myself, quietly struggle with: the relationship that we have with our business finances. And while we confidently can handle our clients' legal disputes, many of us really struggle and, frankly, are intimidated by looking at our own books. And this avoidance creates unnecessary stress and limits both our practice growth and personal wealth building. And so, to address all these questions, we've got Montel Hawkins, a wealth management expert who specializes in helping professionals transform their relationships with money. Montel.
Thanks for having me, and I really appreciated you reaching out. So thank you.
So, before we dive into our conversation, I'd love to hear about what sparked your interest in helping professionals optimize their wealth management strategies and helping them manage their businesses a little bit better.
Yeah, good question. It's always a good time to go down memory lane and to kind of talk about how I got into the industry. Um, by no means do I come from a family where we had these kind of wealth principles or even conversations, really. I always say when I'm on appointments with clients, I did not grow up at the dinner table talking about how to create wealth. It was actually the exact opposite. However, what my mom did do is we've all heard the phrase, kids do what you do, not what you say. And my mom, I've just always seen her kind of chase her dreams and be very aimful. She worked at the bank, she did mortgages, and then she got her real estate license on the side, pursued her MBA. And I mean, just recently, in her later age, I should say, I don't want to age my mom, but now she's a doctoral student. She received her PhD. So with her just kind of having that side hustle of real estate, again, she didn't teach me business. She didn't teach me how to open up an LLC. However, she did take me to her showings and her listings and her open houses when she was selling homes. And again, kids do what you do, not what you say, right? So I kind of just observed that a lot and found myself in very entrepreneurial activities when I was young. However, how I got into the financial industry, I remember it was 2017, 2018. My twin brother and I, we successfully exited a software business where we created an app at Arizona State University. Go Sun Devils! We are doing amazing right now in football. Just as soon as the when we liquidated our shares out of the company, as soon as that money went into our bank account, in a blink of an eye, it went out just as fast. So I realized, I can't start another business until I know how money works. With my background, I immediately went into sales, and I went for a couple of interviews. And one interview really just struck me. It was a sit down with the financial advisor who just started schooling me on money. And I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh, I am completely incompetent. I have a 4-year degree. I'm a bachelor student, but no one's taught me how to manage my money, and no one's taught me how to pay my loans back. So you know what? I said, teach me. Let's see if it works on me. And I actually hired him as a financial advisor. I got my life insurance when I was very, very young. My girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, we also got her life insurance, or the financial advisor did. And I really just wanted to eat, breathe, and sleep the product of learning money before I felt competent enough to sit across the kitchen table with clients. And the rest is history. Here I am. Obviously, that financial advisor was pretty damn good because he helped me go into the financial industry. And the biggest thing is just making sure that I help people make informed decisions. We are in the informational age, but it can be very confusing out there. So that's where I kind of step in to make sure that you know how to navigate those tough financial situations and to answer those tough financial questions.
So, in your experience, what are some of the patterns that you see in how professionals, and I think specifically lawyers here, but I guess most professionals approach their business finances? Because again, managing business finances isn't necessarily something that we're taught in a 4-year degree. And if it's not taught in university or college, it's really hard to get some of those skills. So, let's talk about what are some of the patterns that you see in how professionals approach the business finances.
Yeah, good question. Romy, I truly believe it is the power of being conscious of your finances, and the opposite of that is just neglecting it, right? What I've come to find out, even in the financial industry, is we have some pretty damn good financial advisors, and they have high net worth clients, and I'm sure it's going to be the same for lawyers, and they do pretty well with executing a financial plan for those high net worth clients, but they completely neglect their own finances, and they don't, save the proper amount. They don't save the proper amount in their retirement account. So I truly believe it's just being conscious and aware and making sure you don't let that fall by the wayside, just as you do with your clients. So number one is be your own best client. That's really what I kind of take home, especially being a financial representative. And then you have to look at your internal accounting system. And don't let me get carried away here because I can kind of rattle off. But how are you paying yourself, right? What is your budgeting, if you will? And I know some people hate that B word. At least it's not a four-letter word; it's a six-letter word. But what is your internal budgeting system look like? How are you paying yourself? Um, and then, once you pay yourself, there are only three ways or three avenues on which you create wealth. So you have your cash flow coming in, and some people get confused thinking that, cash flow is wealth when it's truly not, because you can out earn your spending, or I'm sorry, you can't out earn your spending. But when it comes to creating wealth, you have those three avenues, right? And you can challenge me on this if you want. And I believe your audience and viewers may have all three. The first one is going to be the stock market, right? Let's get that out the way. That's what most people assume that we talk about, which I'm happy to say, yeah, we do investment management. However, we look at the full picture, which leads me to my second way of avenues how you can create wealth, and that's going to be real estate, right? Property, real property. We all know that, especially since 2020, home appreciation is going to continue to appreciate, especially here where I'm at in Arizona, even California. I mean, everywhere in the U.S., homes have appreciated. So that's the second way that you can put your money and it can substantially grow. But the third way, which I think your listeners really want to hear, which is most fastest and the most efficient way that you can create wealth, and that is building a business. There's nowhere in America where you can start off with no money down, and in 2 years or 3 years, you can have 0 to 2 million. I mean, even if you liquidated your business income now and you put all your money in the stock market, you will not make the amount of money that you can make in your business. So I truly believe that, again, if we kind of wrap that in a bow, how are you paying yourself? And we can dive into certain ways on what we teach in terms of profiting first. But when you do pay yourself first, how are you creating wealth, right? Where are you putting your cash flow and allocating your assets, so that 20, 30 years from now, you can retire off of a huge net worth.
And I think that's where, I mean, that's a really good segue, because I think that for the purpose of our conversation, yes, the stock market's great, but it's one of those things where you don't really have a lot of control. You're really relying on the expertise and the experience of others. Same thing with real estate. I mean, I know in the US, property values have appreciated, but here in Ontario, it's a lot more dicier. The property values have gone down, people and things. So I'm completely with you in the three ways, on the three ways that we're talking about. And at the end of the day, if you're building your own business, you're actually in control of all of the factors that go into it. Yes, you're not in control of clients to a certain degree and people coming in, but at the end of the day, you're in control of pricing, you're in control of choosing the client. But going back to what you talked about, which is really what I want to dive in more, is some of the systems that are underlying financial success, and specifically this idea of paying yourself first. Um, how about we touch upon that, and then we'll go through some of the other systems that are associated with running a business.
Yeah, good question, Romy. So, a phenomenal book. If you guys haven't heard of it, go buy it. It's going to be called Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. Yep. He is amazing, and we are by no means, just for your listeners to know, Romy, since you're familiar with it, by no means are we profit first creators, but we are strong, intentional profit first implementers. And What that does is it just helps you have a healthy cash flow system in your business, because at the end of the day, you have to pay yourself first. There's this old sales psychology that sales minus expenses equal profit. Logically, that makes sense, but it's not how we behave, right? Behaviorally, that does not make sense at all. Ideally, what you want to do is after you make a sale, whether if it's a trust, a will, or helping someone as a defense attorney, or we have quite a few clients who are divorce attorneys. Once that revenue comes in, you want to take a predetermined profit from the top, and then whatever is left over is what you can afford your business on. It's not the other way around. Now, in terms of the target asset allocations, we can talk about that at a separate time. Obviously, every industry is going to have a different predetermined profit. But the reason why you're doing that is, you want to reward yourself for the late nights, early mornings, the crazy risk that you took of, starting a business. Because ideally, the reality is 97% of people work for someone else, which means 3% of people actually go take that risk. So you need to reward yourself for actually providing for 97% of the economy and the people out there. So that's one. Now, when it comes to profit first, you have your cash flow system. You want to make sure that you do it correctly in terms of setting it up. A lot of banks aren't, typically profit first. You know, um, what do I want to say? They're not profit first friendly, if you will. You have to make sure you go through the right bank. I'll kind of give you guys the official, according to Mike McCallum, is the official profit first bank is going to be called Relay Financial, or Relay Fi. That's going to be RELAYFI. Relay Fi has everything. Once you read that book and you unpack it, and you're like, you know what, Profit First is great. This is something I want to implement in my business. Relay Fi has everything page by page. Inside of there, you have the different accounts that you want to set up. You can take the predetermined profit, meaning every time you get paid, you kind of automate that, and you're making sure you're paying yourself first. Now, in Profit First, you have two essential things of why it's called pay yourself first. Number one is your owner's compensation, which is you getting paid and rewarding yourself for doing the work. And the second one is profit, which means cash, hard cash in the bank at the end of the year, making sure that you know and you see that you've profited, right? We've all heard of businesses who fail in year one, and then, half of those businesses who are alive by year one, they fail by year four, and that's because they have a poor cash flow accounting system internally, um, inside of their business. So once you have that, now it's about how, when I pay myself, where do I allocate my assets? And I always say you want to plan for the now, the soon, and the later. Now is probably going to be the most essential, especially in this high interest economy, high inflationary economy. The now is going to be, just liquidity, making sure that your liquid rate or liquid term score is efficient, especially owning a business. I believe that you should have at least 1 year of expenses saved up, for opportunities as well, right? Let's say you want to buy a book of business. You don't want to, finance that. You want to make sure you have, that liquidity saved up for the opportunity. The now that you also want to save for is things like unplanned expenses and emergencies, right? That's going to be your now bucket. Now, once you have that dollar amount, right? Let's say you own a house and the now bucket is about $20,000, right? Whatever that dollar amount is, to make sure that your expenses are saved up. And let's say you want to plan for to have a car in, 6 months from now. That's now, right? You don't want to have that invested in the stock market. Keep it in your FDIC insured bank account. Once you have that, your money isn't making money, as we all know. You don't want to put a dollar.
You
Yep.
have to invest it, and I think that's where, and I think that one of the things you're touching on, which is just I just want to just help you elaborate a little bit more on this, is I think the biggest thing. So I'm also a big fan of profit first, and I think that one of the challenges that I think a lot of people struggle with the, especially in Canada, because again in Canada we don't have we tend to be less entrepreneurial than most Americans, and that's most of my growth as a lawyer. and as a business owner, frankly, is by being exposed American viewpoints, for better or for worse. And again, big fan of profit first. I think that the biggest struggle that as Canadians we have sometimes is not having access to like Realify or whatnot. But I think another struggle is this idea of when you're just starting out and you don't really have that capital to build out a profit first mentality. Um, I want to talk. I'd love to learn some more about what are the things that you can do when you're just starting out and you, let's say your first 1 2 years, well maybe even if you've been a practicing lawyer for a number of time and you want to implement it, but again that formula of income minus expenses is profit. If you're trying to shift to income minus profit equals expenses and trying to say just make do with what you have, what are some ways you can transition to that way of thinking? Because again, from a theoretical perspective, this makes sense,
Yeah,
but it's I think what a lot of people struggle with is that transition point, you know.
I completely agree because it's something new, right? However, the reason why I like the profit first method or framework is because it doesn't change you. It doesn't change the way that you run your business. It just ensures that you're profitable. And the way you do that is by automating. I'm a firm believer in just getting it automated. A lot of people, going back to the B word, and I promise it's not a four-letter word, but going back to budgeting, a lot of people get too inundated inside of their budget, right? And a budget is like a crash diet where you can promise yourself that you're not going to eat sugar for the rest of your life, but at some point you're going to go back and eat sugar. And that's the same thing with budgeting, right? You can promise yourself that you're not going to spend, X amount on dates or, X amount going out to eat. But, you don't want to micromanage your budget because then you tend to splurge when you're out of that habit of budgeting. So what we do, I'll kind of give you an example of automating, the profit first and automating your own savings. I do believe that you need a grasp over your budget. You need to have some kind of limitations, and not just be loosely at it. However, you know, grasp it, get a hold of it, and then get out of it. I'll give you an example. There's an app inside of the App Store called Spin Tracker, and I do believe that every life changing event. I'm sorry, whether if it's owning a home, having a new kid, getting married, you do need to revisit your budget to see what your savings rate is. That's what you're ultimately trying to get to, is increasing the savings rate. So there's an app inside the App Store called Spin Tracker. My wife and I, we visited quite a few times in our lifetime, and it manually tracks your spending. You can actually set the categories. And let's say I'm going out to get a coffee. Well, right when I order that coffee, I can go inside the app. I can, go to my category of coffee and I can put in the dollars and cents of what I spent there. And at the end of the month, I can see what did I spend on each category, right? And that's going to be your variable expenses, which tend to change, right? That's going to be up and down. Your fixed expenses really never really change. You can have that on the spreadsheet, and obviously the goal is to see how you can get your fixed expenses down once you know your variable expenses. Um, Now, once you know that, you want to reverse the budgeting, right? You already know it. Don't micromanagement. Get out of it and reverse budgeting, meaning you need to start saving to get a higher net worth and then automate those savings so that okay, I'm living off, let's call it, you want to max out your Roth IRA every year, which I believe is about 543. Now I'm living off of less, 543 less a month, knowing that this is going to a greater cause to increase my net worth so that I don't need to spend this 500 on dates, movies, etc. Now, the biggest thing you're trying to get to that is a higher net worth, because your net worth and your spending will let you know how long you can live off of that net worth. So, a quick example: let's say you have a net worth of $1 million, but you spend about $100,000 a year. Well, your money's going to run out in about 10 years or so, right? Let's say you spend $200,000 a year at $1 million net worth. Well, we cut that in half again, and it's going to run out in about 5 years. So the name of the game here, guys, is how can I live off less, knowing that I'm still paying myself but it's going towards a greater cause, which is, that financial independence number that I'm chasing. And, I can liquidate it then and do reverse budgeting as opposed to being micromanaged and looking at spreadsheet charts and graphs, which we're not a big fan of here at our financial firm. We like to start off with your aims before your assets.
And I think that's where a lot of people don't really understand it. So one of the biggest systems inside Profit First is this idea of having different bank accounts for different things. So, for example, have so from a personal finances side, you could say have a separate bank account for your mortgage. For a business, it might be having one bank account for paying employees, one bank account for profit. So what you would do is you would take revenue in, let's say it's $1,000, and immediately upon putting it into your operating account, you immediately at that point, or let's say at the end of the week or after a set time, move X percent into a profit account. That way, you know this is the amount of money that you have allocated, right? And so I think that what you're talking about right now is so essential. The idea of making sure that once you hit a certain dollar amount, let's say it's $20,000, that after that point, you you invest the surplus, right? So for me, for example, I would like to have between 3 to 4 months of a runway, just so that as long as I have the 3 or 4 months, I know that I'll be able to keep manage it. And I think the best part about the profit first mentality is that you'll know and you'll be able to know when you have the ability to take a vacation, for instance, right? This is not just about building net worth. You've also got to take time for yourself to make sure that you're in a position to help others. And you've talked about the importance of automation, and I want to follow up with you on that point. When we're talking about automation, and from your experience, maybe it's not even about automation, but talking more about broadly spectrum systems. If you're just looking to build this out, what are some of the systems that you need in order to put this profit first mentality into practice? Um, and I'm saying this specifically because I do want to get into a conversation about delegation as well.
Yeah, that actually goes hand in hand because as a business owner, you need to learn how to delegate. I'm not sure if the listeners are familiar with the book, The E Myth, The Entrepreneurial Myth by Michael E. Gerber. Um, but a quick synopsis on it. It's about an accidental entrepreneur. I believe her name was Sarah, and she owned a mom's and pop's business. And when she started off, she wore all the hats, right? She was the janitor, the marketing person, the salesperson in charge of operations, and the CEO. Even though on her business card it says CEO, what you didn't know is she had everything and wore all the hats. However, is that a business, right? Or are you more self employed and you employed yourself a job? So going back to your first question, I won't touch on delegation too much here. But the system that you need to implement for profit first, I believe number one is just the mindset of paying yourself first and rewarding yourself. For some reason, we don't feel like we deserve it, right? Because we're so inundated in our day to day finances with our clients and just doing research. And I assume lawyers are the same way as financial advisors by just making sure that we can provide that value to our clients and kind of just overextend. But again, you want to make sure you think about yourself, and that goes back to paying yourself first and rewarding yourself. As far as the second tools and systems that you need, again, you probably want to look at back to what Romy's point was. There's 5 different accounts on Profit First. Not every bank is going to allow you to open up 5 different checkings accounts. So you want to go out and look, which bank is Profit First friendly. And here are the 5 accounts now that I'm gonna touch on since Romy is a Heimer in this right now, and I love it. Profit First, you have your revenue, which is at the top. That's going to be like your Thanksgiving tray. We just had Thanksgiving, so everyone has been around family. Um, when that tray or when the food is ready, there's one person that's serving the entire family, right? At least in my family, we're pretty big. I have 11. My mom has 11 brothers and sisters, and a lot of cousins. Let's just say that. So if everyone bombarded the kitchen, then it would be no food afterwards left over. And we love our Thanksgiving leftovers. So, use your revenue as the Thanksgiving plate. And then the other five accounts is you serving into smaller trays as opposed to plates. So revenue. And then next you have your, I believe you have your owner's, no, profit. I'm sorry, profits first, which means a predetermined percentage off the top. That's going to be profit in your business, not profit to you. Keep it in your business so that your business is profitable, which is going to give you big smiles at the end of the year. Second is owner's compensation, which is another way of paying yourself first because you are the owner and you need to compensate yourself. If you have more than one employee, then we'll talk about where to pay that employee out of. But owner's comp is paying you for the work that you're doing and the late nights and early mornings. Next, you have your expenses. No, you have your taxes. Taxes next, and obviously, if you want to, ask the reason why we open up a business is for freedom and financial freedom. Owing the IRS is the complete opposite of financial freedom. You can even ask Wesley Snipes that you don't want to get in trouble by the IRS. So that is another account that you want to set up as far as systems in place. And then lastly is expenses. Why is expenses last? That's because after you've paid everything, whatever's left over is what you can run your business on. So that just means that in order to increase your revenue or to increase your owner's compensation is to lower your expenses. That there is no other way around that. So again, in terms of systems in place, we've tried quite a few different financial technology banks. We really love Relay Financial. It does everything for us. You can order virtual cards. You can set up all five different accounts. When your revenue comes in, you can automate it so that right when it comes in, it goes into those five accounts that Romy and I just touched on. And then that way, you're sleeping peaceful at night, knowing that your cash flow is healthy, which is the start of everything. So mindset, and then go check out which bank is profit first friendly.
So virtual cards, I find, is the best thing ever. So any bank that offers virtual cards, I know that I've used Jeeves in the past. I think it's Jeeves Financial. That's another separate thing that's more for US dollar accounts. And then in Canada, we have, I think it's called Float Financial, and then there's another called Wall Financial. And the same type of idea where you can even allocate specific virtual credit cards to different vendors. So that's actually a really easy way to basically say, like, look, I'm not going to go over and above for the specific vendor.
And same with Relay, Romy. I love the fact that we have quite a few staff, and we have expense accounts, and we actually order cards specifically for certain expenses. Yep, I have a client who's actually an electrician, and he uses Relay Financial as well because it's so savvy and it helps him with profit first. And he actually has a card per truck because he has trucks going out to do fix the electrical panels and etc. So that's always great designating specific cards for specific reasons.
So let's quickly touch on delegation. So I think the idea of delegation, and we're talking about all this, like we've really talked about systems and delegating tasks to technology. But but technology is only one part of the puzzle. And the other part of the puzzle is obviously humans. And I think that when you're starting out as a business owner, it's really hard to take the first step in overcoming that will say, you know what, you need to keep everything yourself. So, how do you recommend professionals overcome that initial resistance, letting go? And as part of that question, I guess there's a question of how do you find and onboard the right people?
Yeah, this is a good question, Roman, because a lot of things come to mind. And I first want to start off with this in terms of answering that question is, why did you get in business in the first place? A lot of people, it's a triggering event, right? Either you seen your parents work and, you didn't like the way that they came home and the attitude, or maybe you yourself didn't like the way that your boss was treated. So it's a negative triggering emotion of why you went in business in the first place. But I think people need to get back to that, right? What is your purpose, right? And I do believe that without knowing your purpose, you are sabotaging your finances, 100%. And what I mean by that is, you know, once you know what you're building and how big you want to get it to, let's say you have a purpose of, a $10 million financial independence number. Well, now you know that you need to actually build a business, right? You can't just do that solo. I mean, you probably can. It may take you 20, 30, 40, 50 years or a whole nother lifetime. But, I always say better together, right? One of the, me being an entrepreneur first and then the financial advisor second is when I built my mobile application in 2016 and sold it in 2018 is, you know, day one, I knew that I wanted to delegate. I have no computer programming skills whatsoever. However, I did go online and I did several interviews, and we actually hired our tech team, and they live down in India. Some of the greatest people that I ever met, and because they were skillful at it, right? I didn't have to go read books and take, dev courses, and quite frankly, I would have been horrible at it. So those were the first. That was the first piece of delegation, and then the team, right? Who do you need next, right? Maybe in your industry, it's a paralegal, right? Who's actually just processing the paperwork so you can get out of that. Our business, I mean, no one loves paperwork. I assume in the lawyer space is pretty much similar, but paperwork can take you days, right? Once you just free yourself up from that task, it is alarming how much you can get done by focusing on revenue generating activity. Don't get me wrong, if you're doing paperwork, that means you're making money, at least in our industry. However, is your time worth, doing that paperwork for an extended period of time? So that's probably the first piece of delegation that you want to do is looking at a paperwork or an assistant to kind of help you with that task. Um, I believe also marketing, and thank you to ChatGPT and just AI that can kind of help you. Obviously, like Romy said, you need a human behind it, but ChatGPT can do a lot of things. For example, like create your marketing, one-page marketing plan, your brand statement, your value proposition. You can just literally chat with ChatGPT. You can let them know the task. I always say, "Hey, ChatGPT, can you act like a digital marketing firm that's been helping lawyers for the last 20 years with their value proposition? Here's what I want you to do. Here's the synthesis. Please edit it." That helps a lot, right? That's delegation. So, if that's your first piece of delegation, I think the biggest thing, Romy, and I was actually talking about this with my business partner, Dylan, is as a business owner, it's tough to relinquish control to someone else because this is your baby, and you don't think that that person is going to cherish your clients as much, or you know be as enthusiastic in doing the work as much as you, because this is your baby. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it. Obviously, you want to make sure you hire the right people, but one of our core values here at Modern Wealth is better together. What we do is we want to you know hire people. We want to instill the processes and make sure that they have an execution blueprint. We want to scale up the marketing, and then we want to get the hell out of the people's way that we hire, because they can do better without being micromanaged. So delegation is key. As a business owner, you want to make sure you do that. You just want to go back to the drawing board. What are you building? Where do you want to be in 10 years? Work your way back to 3 to 5 years. What can you accomplish this year to get you closer to that 3 to 5 years? And then quarterly, what can you do to achieve that, to make sure you hit that in 1 year? And then that will kind of help okay, I need to hire immediately.
Uh, that's great advice. I know for me, AI has been such a huge thing. Uh, so let's now talk about, let's go into some lightning round questions. Uh, what is the best financial advice you've ever received?
Is make sure you're working on your plan B. And I don't want that to be misconstrued at all. Obviously, plan A is to blow your business up. But going back to the piece of the conversation of, making sure that you're paying yourself, is as a business owner, I think one simple way to start is start off with a Roth IRA. And you have those income limitations. Obviously, I believe now if you make about over 163,000, you can invest into a Roth IRA because you are over the threshold. However, there are different ways that you can do that, like a backdoor Roth. However, I'll give you a quick example, and then we can move on to the next question. Peter Thiel, the CEO and co-founder of PayPal, he started off with a $2,000 investment and then turned into a tax-free cash or a tax-free, cash pigging bank of $5 billion in his IRA. A Roth IRA just lets you know what you can do when you take your money out in terms of taxes and how it's going to be taxed. It is not an investment. You can put whatever you want into it: gold, artwork, stocks, bonds, etc. What Peter Thiel did is he betted on himself and put PayPal stocks and for like 8 cents on a dollar. And then next thing you know, it's skyrocketing. We all know what PayPal is today. Um, you can actually look that up. The Supreme Court is trying to figure out how the heck that he turned $2,000 to a $5 billion tax-free piggy bank. So my financial advisor who I hired, he maxed out his Roth IRAs, him and his wife every single year. He maxed out his solo 401ks, max them out. And then, it doesn't really matter what you spend, right? I don't care if I spend 800 a month on movies and dates this month because my accounts are maxed out. So make sure you're doing that first and foremost.
What is one, let's say, one book or one author that's really impacted your journey as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. The first book that comes to mind that I read, I believe it was a pandemic year, maybe a year after, was Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And that book is just phenomenal because it tells you the premise of the book is, and I can touch on this and if you want here a little later, but the premise of the book is basically that finances is overly taught as a mathematical, numbers based charts, graphs, budget spreadsheets, and you don't need that at all. It's more about behavioral, right? If you're at the line and you see a Kit Kat bar, or if you're at the grocery store, you're about to check out, you see a Kit Kat bar. Well, charts and graphs and mathematics are not going to help you make a decision if you're going to buy that candy or not. Everything is behavioral, right? How do you behave? Are you used to impulse buying? And it goes back to saving first, right? That's a behavioral mechanism, not a financial, mathematical formula. So Morgan Housel is just awesome. That guy is definitely cornered the market and just speaks truth when it comes to making sure that you are behaviorally helping your finances as opposed to thinking of it as a mathematical formula.
So, which is a really good segue. What is your definition of wealth? Last question.
My definition of wealth is not worn. I truly believe that. Wealth is going to be in accounts that you don't see, right? It's kind of almost invisible, if you will, or out of sight, out of mind. Um, Wealth is not going to be your cash flow. I'm sorry, because if, again, going back to that formula, if you have $1 million net worth, but you spend about 100 grand a year, well, you're just draining your wealth. So wealth is going to be locked up in accounts, out of sight, out of mind, inside of property, inside of stock market, or inside of your business. It's not worn or on a day to day that you see.
That's great. Thank you so much for all this insight. So, I know that you've got a special offer. Would you like to talk a little bit more about the free consultation opportunity that you're going to be providing?
Yeah, we're warmly again. Thank you for this interview. I really appreciate it. And in fact, of our offer, um, going back to that word budgeting again, I do believe that you should at least grasp your budget and at least know the limitations so that you know how to move forward and what to set for your automated savings once you start that route. We do have a money coach slash budget coach on staff. Her name is Rachel. She's awesome. She's has a lot of financial Peace University certifications, and what she does is she helps you determine that budget so that we can immediately start to automate your savings, and you can live off less, and have a game plan and a blueprint. She also helps with debt, credit, just to get you on the right track. Traditionally, a wealth firm really looks at where you're going to be 30 years from now and 40 years from now. I mean, don't get me wrong, we want to do future planning, but part of us with modern wealth, which is all in the name, is we want to help you with today, right? Are you financially healthy today? And, if not, what needs to happen today so we can get you to where you want to be 20, 30 years from now? So again, appreciate the interview. Modern Wealth, you can actually find us mymodernwealth.com. We're on all the social platforms as My Modern Wealth, and look forward to seeing you on the other side.
Thank you so much, Montel. I think this has been such an incredible conversation where I know that our focus, and again, I mean, our chat has, during the pre-interview was really, really broad ranging. And I know that today was really focused on this sort of like profit first principles. And I am confident that our exploration of these concepts will really will really inform how listeners can implement profit first methodologies into their practice. And so, again, remember that you can always connect with Montel. We'll make sure that his contact information is in all of the links and whatnot. And do remember to take advantage of his offer. So, again, thank you for joining us. Remember to subscribe and join us next week for another conversation. Cheers.